Something I did not expect getting into reptiles was just how often lizards losing their feet would be. I also didn't think I would someday be making an entire video just about a bearded dragon's foot, or I guess lack of foot, because it's gone. Forever. There's a lot of different ways reptiles lose various appendages. Most often you're going to see them with missing toes, missing feet, and missing tips of their tail, or their entire tail depending on the species, especially with lizards. And there's a lot of different ways that can happen. One could definitely be birth deformities, or a birth just defect when they're born, missing something. It happens in the majority of, I guess, all animals. I haven't researched all animals, but I think it is something that happens. It's certainly not common, but it happens. However, it is a lot less frequent than all the other things that happen to reptiles that make them end up losing different appendages like their feet. For the first would probably be cohabiting, because take leopard geckos for example. You go to the pet store, you see 10 of them all piled up in the same 10-gallon enclosure, and you're like, oh, I want a couple, they're pretty cheap, I'll get 3. And you put them all in the same enclosure, kind of mimicking that pet store. And then, oh wait, they don't have any personal space and they kind of get upset. They get territorial, they want their own area. It's not quite as large as the entire countries that they have access to in the wild, and so they start nipping at each other. They might be nipping because they need more food, they want more space, they can't reach the heating, and one of the very easy things to nip at is their tails and their toes. And that's also the most delicate parts, because if they get nipped at on their side or on their head, it's going to damage them and they're going to have a cut or a scar, but they can't take their whole head off. However, they can very easily grab a toe, not let go, and that toe gets literally ripped off of the leopard gecko. Same thing can happen with bearded dragons. They can simply get territorial if they're being kept together incorrectly pretty much any time aside from breeding. Also, the enclosure itself can be dangerous for the animal. Like, think of a child, you have a child, you got to baby-proof the home, and you fail at doing that for your reptile. So they're kind of just the baby their whole life. So maybe this bearded dragon, say, gets its foot stuck in something and it can't get it out. It happens overnight, and over that time it's struggling and it starts to actually damage the foot to the point that it completely comes off, or simply kind of kills the foot and the foot ends up falling off itself. This is kind of a gross video now that I realize it. Or maybe there's something unstable, like with bearded dragons. You might have a bunch of rocks piled up for a nice basking spot, and then one rock avalanches down and crushes the dragon's foot and it doesn't get the proper care. But I would say the number one most common way this happens with reptiles is stuck shed, because even though pretty much all animals, I need to stop comparing things to all animals because I really don't know. Compared to a lot of animals, reptiles shed, but very differently, where, say with snakes, it's normally in one big piece. With bearded dragons, it's going to be in patches. And if some of these patches get stuck or don't come off properly because of maybe incorrect setup, or the owner doesn't actually notice that something's stuck, and it starts to build up over time. So say on its third shed, there's 3 layers of shed stuck on the foot, and it's starting to constrict it, kind of like a rubber band. And eventually it loses all blood flow and the foot dies and falls off. That is by far the most common way it happens, especially with leopard geckos, because a lot of people just don't want to sit there spending the time peeling the shed off of each foot, but sometimes you just got to do it. And then once you do it once, you try and figure out what went wrong with the shed. Sometimes it is just a fluke. The leopard gecko got lazy, gave up, maybe didn't even notice their shed on its toe, but other times they might not have had a humid enough area in their enclosure or proper things to help it shed. That's a whole another video. I think I've already done some on stuck shed, but that is by far the most common thing. And kind of the miraculous part about this bearded dragon in particular is whatever happened with his foot, whether maybe it is birth deformity, but I would start arguing most likely not. It did not succumb to infection, because like any open wound, there's at some point on this leg going to be entryway onto the dragon's body where infection could easily enter and kill the animal. And that's certainly what kills a lot of reptiles. Bearded dragons in particular, they're one of the animals where being kept in captivity actually drastically shortens their lifespan compared to being in the wild, where most animals are going to live longer in captivity, say in a zoo, or being owned by a person instead of being out in the open conditions. Predators can get it, whatever. Bearded dragons always, well, not always, but most often end up living a much shorter period of time in captivity, because everybody knows what a bearded dragon is. Everybody thinks they're simple and easy, and they see one at the pet store and they grab it, and then it dies within a year or 2. And there's tons of different ways that this happens, but in the example of this one, I definitely would have expected it to be infection, because assuming that this foot did not naturally be missing, it was probably gross. in the process. And a lot of people, they simply just kind of turn a blind eye to it. Maybe they don't really care about reptiles, they just kind of impulse bought it. It kind of sits in the corner. The enclosure smells a little bit, but I'll deal with it another time. And the animal just starts to build up various problems. So if that does actually start to happen, if a foot starts to come off or something, I've received some where it's like basically gone and it's still kind of a wound, you kind of just have to be extremely sanitary, make sure it's very sterile, and do your best to care for it in that state. And most of the time, if you're paying attention and doing everything as best as you can, it will be able to heal itself. There are times where it needs veterinary help and surgery and stuff, but in this case, as far as I know, I really don't know what he went through because they didn't give any information. I didn't even know he was missing a foot. I unboxed him, not in the video, but he was just one that came in one day, and I was like, oh cool, he looks good, yeah, all right, I put him in an enclosure. It wasn't until later that week that I was like, why is there a mitten on his back right foot? And oh wait, there is no back right foot, it's just a mitten. But like I said, there's a lot of different reasons that someone might not do the appropriate action when a dragon, say, damaged themselves, or why did I say damaged? Injured themselves. What was the other ones? Stuck shed. I shouldn't have to look at my notes for this. Being cohab, that was the other one. I mean, say vet bills. You get a dragon, you're like, oh, it doesn't seem like it'll be too expensive. And then this happens and you realize how expensive the vet bill is gonna be. I mean, like for me, I got blood work and before insurance, it was $200. And I was like, that's it? Because getting blood work on a reptile has always cost me at least $230, $240, even $250 for the exact same test. Everything with exotic reptiles is always more expensive. Kind of like how if you go shopping for reptile products and it's marked as for reptiles, it's automatically just 30% more expensive. It's kind of the same with a vet. You go to a vet, you slap on the word exotic, oh, now it's twice the price, and a lot of people literally can't pay that. I'm not saying it's not their fault, like if they are the caretaker of the animal, it's not really the bearded dragon's fault that its foot is falling off, but I mean, I guess it could be if it didn't get the shed off, but that's probably not the best way to think about pet care. Oh, also, when I was filming, so all the clips you're seeing of the beardy, I filmed those before this part, and I realized while filming, what's up with his nostril? And I looked at the other one, and I was like, oh, his left nostril is completely clogged, like it's impacted with something. I don't know, it's just this black chunk of whatever, so I have to also deal with that now. But imagine like breathing through one nostril for who knows how long. I don't know how long that's been there, but it looks like it's been there a while. So now I also have to get something out of his nostril. So yeah, there's that if you noticed a clogged nostril in the video. So in the cases that the animals do not succumb to the injury, if they don't bleed out from getting hit by a rock, or they don't end up dying of infection after bacteria entered it because the owner didn't properly do whatever, the ones that do heal up, like this one, they oftentimes do really well. And reptiles are extremely impressive at adapting. They are very hardy. I mean, it's not a surprise. They've been on this planet for quite a while. So they definitely know how to adapt and how to overcome things and how to improvise. I don't know. I mean, he's a great example. He's just missing a foot. Bearded dragons don't really use their back feet, and they just walk. Like if he's climbing, it's probably gonna slide a bit on that foot, but he's got 3 other points of contact when climbing a rock or something. So he is currently available on emerald scales as of filming this, and with the future owner, I'd be like, yeah, just make sure he can climb up his basket spot. And past that, he's just like any other. There are others though, like there were some leopard geckos. My favorite one was missing all 20 toes. 20? Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 20 toes. And she couldn't climb anything. She just slid around all the time. So she had to have a very grippy surface. She couldn't walk on like plastic or glass or hardwood floors. She had to have a more rough surface. There's those examples where they do need a lot more assistance, but even a reptile that's missing, say, an entire leg or something, or all of their tail, that doesn't really affect anything most of the time. It's impressive. So yeah, if you notice your reptile has stuck shed on a toe, don't leave it there. Don't let it build up because it's just going to be worse. There's some that I've gotten where it's like there'll be like 4 or 5 layers and I'm able to get it all off without losing the toe, but it can get pretty bloody. And so deal with it before it bleeds, please. Yeah, that'd be nice. And just make sure your enclosure is safe. I mean, most of you watching this video in particular, you probably are more likely to overthink than underprepare. So don't stress over every little detail. Just look at it from a common sense perspective. Is this pretty safe? Is the risk of injury pretty low? And I think that's all you gotta do. That's it. I don't know. Past that, he's a totally normal bearded dragon. Look at him from this angle, you can't even tell. And then you're like this, no, he's special. But that's it for this video. I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.